Joining me now is Alex Newman with the libertysentinel.org, libertysentinel.org. Here, look at this article over there. Deep State Fixer, Epstein's ties to Rothschilds and Trilateral Commission exposed. That was February 9th. February 10th, reviewing the Epstein files, biggest scandal ever, question mark, part 1. Let's get into it. Alex, welcome back to the broadcast. Thanks for being with us.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me, Brandon.
All right. A lot of people are familiar with the Rothschilds. And then, of course, a lot of folks use the name of the Rothschilds and their support of Zionism, a Jewish state, to then tie all of this up to Epstein and then to push a lot of anti-Semitic rhetoric I'm hearing. First of all, what do you make of that people are doing that?
Well, I've known about this controversy for a very long time. And in fact, some of the most faithful believing Jews that I know who truly embrace the Torah, who truly do their best to follow God as outlined in the Old Testament, the prophets, etc., they know about the Rothschilds and they loathe the Rothschilds and they speak out against the Rothschilds. And they say that the Rothschilds are not real representatives of Judaism. And in fact, that should be obvious. If you are embracing the kinds of things that the Rothschilds embrace, how could you also claim to embrace, for example, the Mosaic Law, the 10 Commandments that were given by God to Moses on Mount Sinai? And so I think it's really important to make that distinction. Even many faithful Jews and even many Jewish Zionists, hardcore Jewish Zionists, absolutely reject the Rothschilds and do not regard them as legitimate representatives of their people group, their identity, their religion, their ethnicity. I think the same is true with George Soros. You look at George Soros, and the guy runs around saying he doesn't believe in God. He runs around saying he thinks he is God. He feels like God. That does not sound like a faithful Jew to me. So I think those are important to mention. But, the Rothschilds are very, very significant in the history of the world. Not very well known to your average person. But even their kind of apologists, right? Niall Ferguson is a really good example. This guy's like a court historian if there ever was one, right? He's like a bootlicker for the establishment. He did a book on the Rothschilds called Rothschild, the World's Banker. And in there, he says, kind of just matter-of-factly, that the Rothschilds decided the outcome of the Napoleonic Wars by putting their financial weight behind the British government. Now, imagine the power of a family that can decide the outcome of a war between the two most powerful governments on the face of the planet at that time. That's the level of power we're dealing with here. And so now that we're looking through these Epstein emails, and there are millions of them, nobody has had time to go through them all, including AI, by the way. But what we do see very clearly is the relationship between the Rothschild dynasty and Jeffrey Epstein. In 2015, in fact, we have an email from the Rothschilds saying, it's a contractual email, saying that the Rothschild group intends to pay him $25 million for the work, W with a capital W. And exactly what the work is not quite specified, although from the other emails, I think we can get some sense of that. He sends an email to Peter Thiel saying, I represent the Rothschilds. Peter Thiel, of course, being the founder of Palantir, the PayPal mafia, active homosexual, talks openly about injecting himself with children's blood to live forever. I mean, these are some weird people, Brandon. But it's obviously totally inappropriate to use these examples to promote anti-Semitism, but it's also totally inappropriate to not talk about these things because somebody is scared that they might be called an anti-Semite for pointing out the facts that are perfectly documented in plain English. And I'll say one more thing on this, Brandon, since you asked. There's a very interesting email exchange between Epstein and Ariane de Rothschild. It talks about a university professor who was teaching that the Epsteins and the Rothschilds and the Gutmans were financing Adolf Hitler. And Ariane de Rothschild responds, and Epstein points out, yeah, but this is not a conspiracy theory. This is actually true. And it's true. And he goes through and he says, the Rothschilds and the Epsteins were funding this thing that was funding Hitler. And so it's a very interesting email exchange. I don't know what it all means yet, but I do know that some of these Rothschilds who are emailing with Jeffrey Epstein ought to be brought in for questioning, put under oath, under penalty of perjury, to find out exactly the nature of this relationship, what kind of work was Epstein doing for them, and why was he trafficking underage children for sex? Why was he bringing in Middle Eastern oil sheiks and sultans to get big contracts with Western governments? I mean, these are questions that have to be answered, Brandon. I don't know the answer to them, but we need to get answers on this. And frankly, I think knowing what we know already, we need people in handcuffs.
So we don't take Karl Marx, a self-hating Jew, and use him to say he speaks for all Jews. George Soros, we don't say he speaks for all Jews. Sigmund Freud, we don't say he speaks for all Jews. So, I mean, as Aaron Levarco pointed out today, do we take any of a number of Jews out of history and then say they represent all Jews on the planet any more than we take, I don't know, Jimmy Swaggart or Jim Baker or any of these other people and say, well, they therefore represent all of Christianity and all Christians and all pastors. I mean, we don't say Judas represents all Jews who betrayed Jesus. Yet, of course, we have a Jewish Messiah. All of the writers of the Bible are Jewish except for Luke. But, the point I'm trying to make again is it comes down to the individual and what they're doing. You can't label a whole people based on one or two people or a collection of people, any more than you can blame you and I, Alex, because we're Americans, that you and I had anything to do with slavery. I didn't own slaves. My parents didn't own slaves. My grandparents didn't own slaves. My great-grandparents didn't own slaves. Why should I be blamed for what others did and have to pay reparations? There's consistency here of individual responsibility. And of course, anyone that wants to take these people and therefore say all Christians are this or all Jews are that is clearly not using facts, but in fact, what they're doing is lying. And the Bible speaks to that as well, lying. And slander and defamation and bearing false witness. Yes.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. And it's a very good point, Brandon. And I have seen people trying to make this argument. Nick Fuentes, for example, said about the only interesting... I'm starting to think more and more the guy must be a paid operative. He says the only interesting thing out of the Epstein files is that we now have more proof that Jews run the world. That's not what I got out of the Epstein files or even remotely close to it. I think there's a lot of very interesting and useful information in there. In the book of Revelation, Jesus actually warns of those who say they are Jews but are not, but are of the synagogue of Satan. And I think when we're dealing with people like Epstein, when we're dealing with some of these members of the Rothschild dynasty, that's really what comes to mind, right? They might say they are Jews, and yet they completely reject everything that God revealed to the Jewish people in the Torah, everything that God gave to Moses, everything that God gave to the prophets, everything that God gave to David and to Daniel. And so I think it's very important for people not to fall for that trap any more than, we would believe like, okay, some Catholic priests raped children, therefore all Catholics are child rapists, right? It's an obvious fault in logic that anybody trained in the most basic rudimentary levels of logic would see right away.
Just like when the Lord judges the Gentile nations, he separates the sheep from the goats. The goats try to claim they're of the Lord. He says, depart from me, I never knew you, you worker of lawlessness, you worker of iniquity. But they're like, wait a minute, Lord, but didn't we do this? Didn't we do that in your name and cast out demons and this and that? He says, depart from me, I never knew you. You claim to be my follower, but you were not. Off to hell you go. So we can use this same standard consistently, whether we're talking about Gentiles or Jews. And again, there are good Gentiles and there are bad Gentiles. There are good Jews, there are bad Jews. This is just the nature of man, the fallen nature of man, sinful man. Now,
and Brandon, I want to add before we go to the next thing, for those tempted to fall into the anti-Jew stuff, just do me a big favor. Go back and read Romans chapter 11. Just read it and reread it and reread it. God has a special plan for the Jews. His promises to the Jews have not been overturned in any way whatsoever. God is going to use them. He has been using them. And, don't fall for the satanic lie that all Jews are evil and that there's some sort of Jew conspiracy to enslave humanity. It's a satanic conspiracy, and it very much includes people who identify as Jews and people who identify as Christians and plenty of other things. So we must not fall for that. I know there are more and more voices making those arguments, but real Christians who read the Word of God should be able to see right through that.
Absolutely. Well said, Alex. All right, so let's talk about the Trilateral Commission, the Rothschilds, Davos, all of these groups, how they're connected, and is this the biggest scandal ever?
I think it is, Brandon. I've spent the last couple of days trying to figure out when was there a bigger scandal. People think of Watergate. Watergate was nothing. We're talking about a child rapist, a child sex trafficker.
Which, by the way, can I just stop you right there? They're telling us at the DOJ that nobody was, I guess, trafficked, but yet wasn't this guy charged with that when he got his...
He was convicted. Todd Blanche needs to resign immediately. I mean, he's either completely clueless or he's a liar. I'm sorry. I like a lot of the folks working in the Trump administration and at DOJ, but those comments were so asinine. It's hard to believe somebody would make them. But no, this is such a big scandal, Brandon. I mean, you and I have talked about this for years. I mean, we kind of knew that this is how the world really worked, but now we've got the smoking gun evidence. There's 859 references to pizza in these emails. Go read the references to pizza and tell me whether they're really talking about pizza, okay? Since when do you torture pizza? Something is really, really wrong here. And frankly, I think all these people, I mean, if your name is in there in connection with raping children, with pizza, with shady business deals, with blackmail operations, with intelligence or counterintelligence, nefarious efforts against the United States of America, corrupt business, you need to be brought in for questioning at the very least under oath, so that people can be held responsible for at least perjury. But we have evidence in here, Brandon, it seems to me, that the highest levels of power, government, business, culture, everything, are not just compromised, but are some of the most sadistic criminals or involved in some of the most sadistic crimes that the mind could even imagine. I mean, some of the stuff is so shameful. It reminds me of Ephesians chapter 5, verse 12. Some of it's so bad, so shameful, you can't even talk about it because it's so wicked. And the fact that this is all out in the open, I think, is an earth-shattering development. And assuming the evildoers don't get their way, this is going to be talked about for a very long time to come.
Do you believe there were children that were killed? Because I read where some kids were killed and maybe buried. Do we know where they were buried? Is our government going to go look and see if they can dig up and exhume bodies and figure out how they were killed?
That's one of the allegations in the emails on the Zorro Ranch, Epstein's ranch in New Mexico. There is an allegation in one of the emails that there were two girls, yes, we're talking about children, who were killed during sexual activities that cannot be described here, and then buried on the ranch. And so, yeah, it's a big ranch, but when we have dead children, they need to be investigated. I mean, every resource at the disposal of our law enforcement agencies. I'm talking local, state, and federal. Everything not needed to prevent murder and burglary and rape and things like this should be going into these types of cases. State attorneys general should be investigating. DOJ should be investigating local sheriff's departments, district attorneys, everybody with any kind of nexus to the Epstein files. And by the way, this guy was international. He was all over the country. Everybody ought to be devoting some of their law enforcement resources, some of their investigative resources to figuring out what happened here and bringing criminal charges against the people involved.
So who was he working for? Was he working for multiple groups, multiple agencies? Was he kind of just hey, I'm a free will contractor. You need information on people. I saw a picture the other day. He was supposedly standing in a room talking to someone. The guy said, I don't know where he is, but there are boxes in the back that say CIA on this. Was he working for the CIA? Was he working for other governments? Was he kind of a honeypot orchestrator for hire?
It's a very good question, and I don't think we know the answer to that yet. I mean, we know he was working for the Rothschilds. To me, there's no question that the highest levels of the U.S. government knew about this guy. The NSA has access to all of our phone calls, all of our emails, all of our text messages. The guy was using Gmail for crying out loud. I mean, we all know the NSA had all of these files and has had them all along. I've talked to whistleblowers from the NSA who say, yes, they have everything. They have access to everything. So my guess is there was some nexus with U.S. intelligence. There's good reason to believe that he was involved with MI6. There's good reason to believe that he was involved at least with certain elements of the Mossad. There's good reason to believe that he might have been involved with Russian intelligence. So I think the Rothschild link is probably the most significant because I think when you're talking about the deep state behind the deep state, right? I look at the intelligence agencies as kind of like operational arms of the deep state. I don't, contrary to what some conservative commentators would have you believe, I don't think the CIA and the MI6 and the KGB and the Mossad really run the world. They just kind of do some of the dirty work for the deep state. And it looks to me like Epstein was a level above even that. Obviously, a lot of intelligence agencies must have known what was going on. Again, they have billions of dollars at their disposal to listen to grandma's phone calls. The idea that they didn't know that Epstein was engaged in some of these things is utterly preposterous. Look at the kind of people who are showing up on his island. Bill Clinton, right? Clearly, the intelligence agencies knew. So I don't think Epstein was taking orders from any particular intelligence agency, but he was certainly working with some of them, certainly passing on information, and I'm sure getting information.
Why, if nothing's wrong here, why are people resigning? If nothing's wrong here, why did we reportedly, we read that reportedly the prince and the king have kicked Andrew out of the royal palace that he was living in? Why are these people resigning from jobs? If nothing is to see here, if nothing went on that's wrong, why are people being ostracized and choosing to resign and even changing the name of organizations and centers that bore their name? Did we just see that with Mitch, the former Senate leader, Mitch, what's his face?
Mitch McConnell?
No, not Mitch McConnell. The from way on back, the senator, he negotiated with Ireland and all kinds of guys way back there. I'll look his name up. It'll come to me in a second. But apparently he had a organization with his name on it. They're going to change the name of the organization and all of this stuff. If there's nothing here that's so bad, why are these people being treated this way? Which tells you there must be something here, right?
There's not just something here. There is mountains and mountains of some of the most damning evidence I've ever seen here. And resigning is nothing. I think we need to see a lot of people in handcuffs. Yes, we are seeing a lot of resignations. I think we're going to see a lot more. This may still bring down the regime of Keir Starmer, the communist Fabian leader of the United Kingdom, the far-left prime minister there. He's now trying, I didn't know Mandelson was involved with Epstein. I just believed him. And, okay, yeah, right. There's a lot of these people who must not just resign, but must be held accountable, must be brought to justice, must be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. If we don't see that, we've got an even bigger problem than we realized, right? There is so much here to go on. And another thing that's really troubling, Brandon, one reason we're not seeing more resignations is because the Department of Justice, very much in violation of the law that was passed ordering them to release all of this, has redacted the names of a lot of the people who were corresponding with Jeffrey Epstein. Now, they were allowed to redact names of innocent victims. Don't tell me that people sending torture videos to Jeffrey Epstein were innocent victims. These people were clearly involved. We want their names, and we want them now. Again, the law does not allow them to redact the name of potential perpetrators, only victims. To try to claim that some of these people whose name, I did a 30-minute episode of my show Behind the Deep State, dropped yesterday on this, and over again, from redacted to Jeffrey Epstein, from Jeffrey Epstein to redacted, these are not victims. Again, these are people who were working with Epstein. These are people who were engaged in sadistic crimes against children, against girls, against women. And we need to know who these people are, not so they can resign, so that they can be prosecuted and thrown in jail.
Here's the main wire. Maine's embattled George Mitchell, reeling from Epstein files, quits his own institute, May 6, 2026. Comes in the wake of his name appearing in documents related or released by the U.S. Department of Justice as part of the Epstein files. The institute, which announced its resignation on its website, is also considering stripping Mitchell's name from the organization. He has repeatedly denied claims he participated in any of Jeffrey Epstein's alleged sexual trafficking. Until his resignation, Mitchell had served as the honorary chair of the organization. Okay, if you did nothing wrong, why are people resigning? I mean, if someone said, hey, you walked into a ballroom and when you walked into this ballroom of 200 people for a reception, Jeffrey Epstein was in the room and there's a picture of him and you're in the back of the picture, my response would be, at the time, I didn't know who Jeffrey Epstein was and I didn't do anything wrong. So I didn't. There was a lot of people in that room I didn't know who they were. So you think I'm going to resign over that? No. I mean, right? Wouldn't people say that? I mean, this guy, I'm sure, walked into a lot of conference rooms and other places where people had no idea who he even was, particularly early on, and had nothing to do with what he was up to, right? I mean, isn't that how some of this works?
Yep. And that's a very good point. But again, I think we are going to see not just resignations, but we need to see prosecutions here. I think part of the reason some of these people are resigning is because they know how deep the rabbit hole goes. They know that, and there's more to come. Right? There are still a lot of documents that the DOJ has not released yet. I suspect we're just at the beginning of this. And Brandon, nobody has had time to examine 3 million documents, right?
No.
Nobody.
What about
there is
Steve
still
Bannon?
so much
What's
more
that all
buried in
about?
there. I don't know. We saw the video that was released of Steve Bannon interviewing Jeffrey Epstein. A rather friendly interview, actually, if you look at it. There are discussions now about whether Bannon was planning to produce a documentary kind of exonerating Epstein. I don't know what the facts of that case are. I've been on Bannon's show. He seems like a nice enough guy. But, I think everybody who was involved with Epstein needs to be looked at. And, if it was an innocent relationship, they should be able to say so under oath, right? Bill Gates, he should be able to say, this is all that it was. I swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help me God, with his hand on a Bible. And if he's lying, if we can find evidence of perjury, throw them all in jail. But I think all of these people who were involved with Epstein in any significant way, I mean, if you sent the guy an email and sent him an article one time, all right, maybe that's not a huge deal. But if you were involved with him in any way, personal, financial, legal, we need an explanation of what was going on. And if there's evidence of criminal activity, it needs to be prosecuted.
Well, we were told by Pam Bondi there were thousands of videos. Can we play that again, Logan? Didn't she say there were thousands of videos and child blank? I don't want to say the word so that our algorithms mess everything up, but didn't she say that?
I remember
hearing that. In front of the White House. In front of the White House, yep. Right?
Mm-hmm.
But then all of a sudden there's nothing. There were thousands of videos. And it involved illegal activity because last time I checked, child blank is illegal.
Yep.
No.
And my guess is there are still people at the highest levels working to protect as many folks as they can. Why else would you redact all these names?
Here it is. Go ahead, Logan.
The Epstein files are going to get released?
We hope soon.
Okay.
So,
any dates?
No, you know what it is? There are tons and thousands of videos.
Yeah.
And it's all with little kids. So they have to go through every one.
So, look, James O'Keefe.
Okay. And then there's another one of her saying the same thing in front of the White House, Logan. Out on the street there in front of the green tents. Is this debacle being done by, is Todd Blanche at the assistant DA, is he not a former Democrat? Is this being done to sabotage President Trump's administration, to damage him? I mean, it's come out that again and again and again, he's the one that called the police. He is the one that called them supposedly, according to some of these files I've read, thanked them for investigating him, that everybody's known for a long time what he's up to. Thank you for investigating him. So if you really think they had something on Donald Trump, don't you think they would have already used it if they had something on him? Number one. So why is this being used to make his administration look like they're the ones covering up for the rich and the powerful? Some are saying, well, because Donald Trump's friends are in on this. I don't think Donald Trump has the personality of someone that is willing to sacrifice his reputation for someone else. I think if we know anything about Donald Trump is going to protect Donald Trump. Right? And if he's got some people that should be exposed that are friends of his, well, I think he's going to let them get exposed before he damages his brand. I mean, don't we know that about Donald Trump? So why is this being handled this way by the DOJ unless it's being done deliberately to hurt MAGA?
I think that's what's happening, Brandon. In fact, I've spoken to several people who know a lot of things, and I was told that the president was told that, oh, if those come out, there's a lot of allegations about you, and you're going to have to explain all this, and you don't want all that confusion. And in fact, if there was anything in there implicating Trump in any way, it would have been on you and I both know, would have been on the front page of every newspaper on planet Earth for days on end. It would have been the lead story on every one of the network TV stations. It would have been absolutely plastered everywhere. There are some people in there who I think need to be scrutinized a little bit more closely. Howard Lutnick, Jeffrey Epstein's neighbor, big-time Democrat donor, involved in a company that was creating basically the prison planet, the CO2 monitoring and tracking stuff. Helped unveil these stable coins and Tether and all these crypto schemes. Now he's serving as Commerce Secretary. I would like to know what the nature of that relationship was.
Well, wasn't he has literally bought a house next door to him for a gazillion years, right? Was it 20 years or something? He was next door neighbor to this guy? Is that right?
Yeah. And he says, nothing happened. They went over, had dinner. Jeffrey Epstein said something weird about a massage. And okay, so, if that was it, maybe that was it. I don't know. But I think Lutnick is one of the people I have had my eye on from the very beginning of the administration as somebody who needs to be scrutinized a little more closely. Again, history of donating to Democrats, involved in some business activities that are quite critical to the global system they're trying to impose on us. So I'd like to know more about the nature of Lutnick's relationship with Epstein. But I don't think Trump in any way is implicated here, contrary to what the Democrats were hoping for. Because again, if there was anything there, it would have been everywhere already. That's right.
Final minutes. Massey. You think he's going to go onto the floor of the House where he has legal protection and start naming names? Should he?
He's already started. He's already started revealing some of the stuff that's in there. And I, for one, am glad to see it. Right? I know Trump is really mad at Massey. Massey's got a great record as a constitutionalist when it comes to voting. And he is actually one of the ones who forced the release of the Epstein files. So, again, I know Trump is mad at him. I know a lot of MAGA is mad at him. I've interviewed him before. I think he's a nice enough guy. But I'm grateful that he is revealing some of this stuff. I hope we get a whole lot more of that in the months to come.
Have you read this?
I have not, but I keep hearing good things about it, so I plan to.
The Invisible Coup. I have read it. I have marked it up. And I said to my wife last night, after spending a couple hours reading more of it and marking it up, between Mexico, that is deliberately infiltrating our country with their consulates and sending 1 million textbooks a year, 1 million textbooks a year into the nation to educate Hispanic children into Marxism, and America's bad, and we stole the land. He talks about that. Between Mexico's relationship with China, Mexico undermining us, the CCP here working and undermining us, having what will be by 2030 over what's reported to be 1 million babies that will now be able to vote who are born in the U.S., who come here, they get surrogate parents if necessary. The babies are born, taken back to China and raised, and then can be brought back 1 million plus by 2030 who can vote for the CCP in America. By the time you add in the Muslim Brotherhood, and he has a whole chapter on them, does an excellent job because I know a lot about the Muslim Brotherhood. And my wife said, how do you know what he's saying is true? I said, well, first of all, he footnotes it. But what he wrote about the Muslim Brotherhood was so accurate, which I know from my years and decades of studying this, that if he started getting stuff wrong in the Muslim Brotherhood, I would know it. And he didn't, which tells me he does his homework and the other stuff I'm reading. Plus, he has a lot of footnotes and documentation. But between Mexico's relationship to China, China's infiltration of America, the Muslim Brotherhood's infiltration into America, and then we add in Russia and what they're doing. When we get done, and the Marxist groups that have penetrated the Catholic organizations, many of these progressive Marxists that are from Latin America, that some of them tied to terrorist groups, have found their way to America and are running organizations all over this country from one end to another. When I got done reading this book, I said to my wife last night, we're done. We're toast if Donald Trump doesn't take the next 3 years, sign the Insurrection Act if necessary, go through this book, get the help of you, Trevor Loudon, other people that know who these community organizers are, these Marxist tied, the CCP tied, the Gordon Changs who know where all this, if he doesn't bring all these people in and start building a list and then going through who they are, their organizations, their websites, their bank accounts, round them up and get them out of the country, seize their accounts, we are done. We're done. That's it. They have all the architecture in place when they take power to keep this coup d'etat going, this color revolution, this insurrection, whatever you want to call it. I mean, there's more than enough between you, me, Trevor, Gordon, Peter Schweitzer, and the others that know all this stuff to figure out who these groups are down to the ground level, down to the organizational level. And if you remove them because of their illegal behavior and activities and subversion, they will have no leaders. That in themselves would cause a lot of this to go away because they would not have the trained leaders. Many of them who trained in Latin America and then started penetrating here, including into the unions. If Donald Trump doesn't get serious about this, I'm sorry to say, this tells me they have infiltrated far more than even those of us who are doing this on a daily basis for decades know.
Yeah. No, you're exactly right, Brandon. I've been sounding the alarm about the communist Latin American infiltration of our country going back my entire career in journalism. One of my first really big investigative pieces was at the New American Resurgent Communism in Latin America. And it was very obvious what was happening. There was a communist network in Latin America backed by Russia, backed by China, using oil money from Hugo Chavez and later Nicolas Maduro, that were sending huge numbers of agents and money and highly trained operatives, special forces, terrorists, saboteurs into our country with plans for a revolution. I lived in Mexico more time than I've lived in anywhere else in the world. And I think I've shared with you some of what it was like growing up there. The hatred of Americans is beyond what any normal American can understand. They go back to the American invasion of Mexico, and the gringos came and they killed our niños héroes and they massacred our poor, they stole our land. This is the norm. This is mainstream Mexican understanding of history and geopolitics and relations with the United States. It's a hatred that is instilled in them from a young age. And I still remember first grade, second grade, my teachers would identify me as an American, and suddenly all the class would hate me just because I was American. It's very real. So I look forward to reading Peter's book. I know Trump is working with some of the good folks over at the Government Accountability Institute. And you're right, he needs to do much more of that.
Well, he says the cartels.
3 years to clean this up.
He says that it's very likely the cartels are helping to fund some of these groups.
Of course. And again,
because
Brandon,
they want open borders. They want open borders for drugs, and they want open borders for sex trafficking.
Yep. Well, and the cartels are really extensions of the communist and terrorist movement there. Like if you go to the Foro de Sao Paulo, that was founded in 1990 by Castro, Lula, the FARC, which is essentially a cartel. I mean, it's a Marxist narco-terror group turned government. But the drug trafficking was always to raise money for the revolution. Yes, some of these guys live in big houses and they have golden AK-47s, but that's just a fringe benefit. The real reason that they're doing the drug trafficking is because they need the money to do this operation, which is first take the Western Hemisphere and then the world.
Okay, closing question. And I want to ask this of Patrick Wood as well on technocracy and transhumanism. When you read all of these networks that I talked about that are here to bring down the country and who are tied to terrorist groups and violent groups and MS-13 and Trendale Ragwa and all these groups that you know about, are the Marxists going to be allowed to destroy the country, to destroy private property, to target Christians and conservatives? Or are they going to be allowed to do just so much that the majority of Americans will scream, stop, stop them, stop them, stop them. And then in rides the transhumanist, the globalist, the technocrats to save the day. And people are willing to surrender the biometrics, the digital IDs, whatever it takes. Is this Hegelian dialectic going to be used to get us to surrender, to go back to normalcy? Or will people like Peter Thiel, Elon Musk, other guys lose control themselves and be overtaken because they can't overcome this system?
I think
the
it'll be
system being
similar
the
to what
Marxist.
Yeah, I think it'll be similar to what we've seen in other communist revolutions, right? The communism, people mistake it as like an ideology or some kind of economic system. It's really not. It's a cover story. It's a smoke screen to enlist useful idiots, idealistic morons into the revolution. And the purpose of the revolution is to destroy the previous thing. So in Russia, of course, it destroyed the Tsarist system and the Orthodox Church. The purpose is really to destroy America. Now, do the higher level people promoting this, like, Wall Street and the Bolshevik Revolution, the Bolshevik Revolution, it's a fact, was funded by some of the biggest fat cats on Wall Street. Is that because the fat cats on Wall Street were Marxist? Of course not, right? I mean, they would be the first ones to be hung and have their resources looted. So the armies of idiot Marxists are going to be the first ones to be put up against a wall and shot once the revolution is successful. They will end up very much like Leon Trotsky. They will end up very much like the vast majority of Stalin's lieutenants and deputies. They will end up dead, maybe tortured first. But what we have seen is that very much like with the mafia, everybody thinks they're going to end up on top, and then they start turning on each other. So I don't think this is going to end the way a lot of these evildoers think it's going to end. I don't think it's going to end well for them. But if we're not careful, it's not going to end well for any of us. So we really need to get to work.
So you believe that many of the globalists are, like I've said for years, they're letting the junkyard dogs off the leash, the Marxists and the Islamists, and then they'll step in and offer up the solution. So you believe they are being controlled by the globalists?
Of course, and it's always been like that. I mean, Karl Marx was financed by the League of the Just. These were super wealthy men. Almost all the communist revolutions that have been successful precisely because the deep state globalists wanted them to be successful. Zbigniew Brzezinski talked about Marxism as the next phase in human revolution, but then after that comes the real next phase, which is what we want, the technocratic system, he called it the technotronic age. So they have a very different vision in mind. The Rockefeller clan, the Soroses, the Rothschilds, the Epstein, they are not planning on giving up their billions, okay? They're building bunkers right now until the storm passes, and then they think they're going to come out rulers of the ashes. But I don't think it's going to go the way they think it is.
Let's pray it doesn't. There it all is, libertysentinel.org. He's got 2 articles over there reviewing the Epstein files, biggest scandal ever, part 1, and then this one here, which is titled Deep State Fixer, Epstein's Ties to Rothschilds and Trilateral Commission at the libertysentinel.org, libertysentinel.org. We also carry his broadcast here at Worldview Tube. Thank you for everything you do, Alex.
No, thank you, Brandon. It's an honor and a pleasure to be on here. Appreciate it, and I hope people will tune in to the Sentinel Report on Worldview Tube.
Thank you. I hope they will as well. Alex Newman checking in. Wow, great stuff, right? We'll be right back. Studies have shown America's water supply is not safe. It is filled with toxins and chemicals. Go look it up. This is fact. Fact check me. And then I'll offer you this solution. Worldviewwater.net. Take a look at this list. This water purifier removes all kinds of harmful toxins like lead, fluoride, chlorine, arsenic, pesticides, bacteria, and pharmaceuticals, and more. This is the water I give to my 3 dogs. I drink it every day. I have one of the filters in my kitchen, under the kitchen sink, and then I have one on my shower. Do you know how much your skin absorbs of water when you're in the shower each and every day? Protect yourself and your body. Remain healthy. Eat good food. Drink purified, clean water. One of the most powerful water filters available in America. Worldviewwater.net. That's worldviewwater.net. Again, tell your family and friends about it. In fact, maybe even give this as a gift to some of your family and friends, particularly those of you who have children and grandchildren. Worldviewwater.net.